Welcome to Puck Talk CS Live. This is a new format we're trying, and we brought on none other than Zack Phillips, Toronto Maple Leaf, Canadian legend. Listen, Zach, first of all, connection through family. I got
Yeah.
to broadcast with your sister at Quinnipiac, Winnipeg. Our guy Jay Quillen now, a Marley. But
Mhm.
you mentioned something right before we hopped on about our take from the off season, and I think that's a great place to start for the game preview tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, first of all, very cool and appreciate you guys having me on here. But cool to be able to do this, especially considering I know you did the broadcast with my sister. So I already knew who you were because of watching those. And then you had reached out to me. We've talked a bunch kind of offline on Twitter and stuff, but DMing back and forth. But pretty cool. But when I was looking into the show and some of the stuff you guys talked about to kind of just prepare, I've seen clips. And then my dad pointed it out as well. You guys said the Leafs were the losers of the offseason. So I don't want to come on here and just kind of fire at you guys right away. I want us to get a little bit more detail. I looked into it a bit more after the fact. I don't think that they were the losers. I don't think they won. Let me be clear there. But I don't think that they were the losers. I think that they just had a okay offseason.
Listen, I'll say this. Steve-O, he I think was more the proponent. I think the angle that I was coming at, Zach, was more of like what changed from the I guess because genuinely, New York, I've been
Mhm.
in the New York market. It's there's a lot of pressure, but it's not the same locker room as if you go to the New York Yankees, right? The Leafs are it. They're the show.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm trying to grasp is when did it become like the Rangers season has been called like a last dance. I don't love throwing that term around because I love the Bulls documentary.
Mhm.
But when did the Toronto go from like, all right, it's not working kind of year in and year out to like this has to be the year. Like that's the conversation I'm seeing around the Leafs to start the year. So when did that kind of shift?
I think for fans, that's kind of been it for like the last 2, 3 seasons. The issue was the expiring contracts. Matthews, Marner, Nylander, those guys were always looming. Tavares and Marner expiring here now. Matthews and Nylander end up getting extended, but it was looking at those guys being like, you're going to need more money going into them. It's going to eat up more of the cap space. Where is the rest of this money gonna, like, how are we gonna allocate the rest of that? So that was always a concern, kind of pushing these last like 2 to 3 years, making them a million times more important than ever. This is the one that feels the most like we got to get something done here now because Morgan Riley is kind of starting to climb to the other side. Now, I'm not saying he's like rapidly declining as a player, but like he's pushing to the age where it's like, okay, now at some point it starts to dip. Tavares, the guy already skates with a piano on his back, and he's got to come up. He's got to. We have to make a decision about whether you resign him. What's his AAV gonna be? And the most important one is the Marner contract, where it's like that's the one people are dreading, not because of what it's going to be for term and salary, but like it was messy last time we dealt with the contract here in Toronto. I don't know if you guys saw it as much from like an outside perspective, but it was family involved. It was agents getting insiders in Toronto involved. Every time you went on the radio, you'd hear a new number. It was like, where is this coming from? The team wasn't speaking on it, and then I don't think Dubas handled it too well. So then all of a sudden, Dubas was speaking on it, and it was like it was very divided, and then fans basically like turned on him, and no one wants to hear that. So we all kind of just are like, let's just win it now, and then if he leaves, he leaves, and then we don't really care anymore. Like they think so. That's kind of like the pressure on some of this as well, where it's like it makes everything leading up to all this and this next summer a little bit more important, I guess, and kind of trying to fast track some of it before we have to deal with any of that.
Yeah, I actually think in hindsight, I actually said this too on the same episode, the off-season kind of we talked about, there's always a lot to talk about with the Leafs in the off-season, OG6, brothers in arms. But
Yeah.
the one thing I noticed in hindsight is that Dubas did a lot of work that I think because of the reputation of the first round exits was overlooked. Like he did bring in a lot of guys, Thornton, Marlowe, Thomas Placanis. Like you go in, the goaltenders have been in and out. Now this year They bring in Berube. What have you noticed with the team this year and how they've adjusted early to more of that heavier style? I know you mentioned that with Carter Hutton on your latest Leafs After Dark.
Mhm. I think the biggest thing is north south hockey. We've seen. I think that's one reason actually why Nylander does so well in the playoffs. Like Nylander's kind of become one of my favorite players here, and one of the players I enjoy watching the most is because in the playoffs, yeah, he does all this fancy stuff and is able to hold the puck and skate around circles in the offensive zone. But when it comes to actually going up the ice, it's straight lines. Like you're just going north south quickly, get in the zone, get the offensive zone, maintain offensive zone pressure. Like that's kind of the way he's excelled in the playoffs, which is the most important. Matthews, Marner, like these guys have been a little bit more east west, go zigzag up the ice, take your time, whatever, and you get snuffed out when it comes to the most important time. And Craig Berube is not going to allow that. It is move the puck up the ice, get in the offensive zone. There's no dilly dallying on your way up the ice, and he won't tolerate it. Like they went up 5-2 against the Kings the other night. It was 5-1. LA makes it 5-2, calls a timeout right away, cut to him on the bench. He's giving it to them, saying, like, no more effing around. Get up the ice, get in the offensive zone. Let's not blow this thing. Like, wake the F up. That's not something we've seen before, and you're going to start to see that a whole lot more. I think also the defensive zone is a little bit tighter. There's just no time and space relative to what we've seen in years past with this group, where it's like, yeah, they played well defensively, but this is like actually forcing the other team to make mistakes here now. And I think that those are huge adjustments that will benefit them a lot when it actually matters in the playoffs. And I think that's part of the reason why we've seen them have so much success in the regular season and then it fall off and you get punted year after year in the first round there. It's just not built for playoff success. I think it is now.
Now we are obviously we're in a New York market, so a lot of our listeners might not be, might not follow what's going on with the Leafs every single day. But I want to hear
Mhm.
it from you, big Leafs guy. What are the expectations that you have for this team coming into this year, and who do you think needs to have a big year on the Leafs?
Expectations. I'm gonna sound like a bit of an ass. Stanley Cup. Only one team wins it, so that's why I say I'm gonna sound like that. It's like you can't just expect them to win it, but like those are the expectations. I'm sure it's the exact same in New York, and it should be. You're a contending team. If the goal isn't to win the Stanley Cup, cancel the season. Like just don't worry about it. Don't go out on the ice ever. Like who cares? Because that's what you're trying to do. We're trying to win. And if that's not the ultimate goal of these teams, spending to the cap and going all in at the trade deadline and firing coaches, like what are you doing? People were all excited about the first round win against the Lightning, and don't get me wrong, I was too, but like that wasn't the goal. That was just something exciting along the way because we hadn't seen the first round win since like 2004. So it had been a long time coming. That's why there's the excitement. People are saying, like, act like you've been there before. Do you know how many fans in Toronto haven't been there before? Like, we haven't seen the first round wins. So it's cup. It's like go to the Stanley Cup final. Get there. Like, that's the goal for the team. Guys that I want to have a big year. Really excited to see what Matthew Nyes can do in a full 82 game schedule and with more minutes under a guy like Craig Berube. I think he fits perfectly the style Berube wants. You see early here, like he's not just getting power play 2 minutes, but Berube liked what he did in a couple of games ago and is like, all right, power play 1, see what you can do up there. Giving him runway on the first line, giving him opportunities late game situations, up a man, needing a goal late, winning and trying to preserve a lead, giving him chances. I love Matthew Nyes. I got to see him. I know, Matthew, you got to see him there when Quinnipiac took them down, but with Minnesota. But like, I love what this kid brings. I love the development he's made, the maturity and the growth of him through the first couple of games so far in his couple of years in the league. That's one guy. The other guys really is just I really like Ekman Larson. I'm not really expecting a big season out of him, like points wise, but he got the tap and he's running power play 1 here now. If that power play can start clicking like they should, I don't see why a guy like Ekman Larson can't put up like a bunch of points quarterbacking that unit. He's also playing on the second pairing, so he's getting minutes. Berube likes him, and now he's all of a sudden getting to run the power play one with some of the best offensive players in the NHL right now. Those are a couple of guys that I'm looking at here right now going, wow, like these guys could have some seasons.
We got an OEL bump. I love that. He was
I
one of the
know.
guys I think we low key trash on in the off season. You know what? I think I usually support players like that because obviously, I think from Adam Market, the biggest story is Truba. And it's like, at what point do we like look at the game and objectively understand that like players are gonna have great moments and they're gonna have their bad moments too?
Yeah,
I think the Leafs, I think you guys have seen enough from your end to agree with that overall, right? Like there are players that have had some dips in their play, but overall, like it's going to happen. I think if Darnell Nurse can get to the Stanley Cup final, granted with the two best players in the world on the team, or arguably two best players in the world on the team, like anybody can make the cup final in that respect. Like if
yeah,
one guy is struggling, it shouldn't mean the whole ship's going down.
yeah. I mean, it's also like we're watching these guys under a microscope, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about Morgan Riley. If you're if you're on an outside perspective watching Morgan Riley, like he's having a fine start to the season. There are fans here through 4 games, like lighting torches, wanting to go to his house and stand outside saying "Leave town." Like he's done nothing wrong, but it's just the nature of it. It's the same thing with Truba. I think if you watch on a big picture or a larger scale, like what he does for the team is probably some stuff that you can't replace realistically. But if you're a Rangers fan, and understandably so, you're watching every single shift, probably looking, being like, the money we pay you probably doesn't match to the production that you're bringing from an on ice perspective. Leadership is very hard to quantify, but on ice, maybe not there so much. And you guys have to watch him every single shift that he takes. There's going to be a lot of stuff going wrong in those shifts if he's taking on certain matchups that maybe aren't favorable to him or just kind of getting exposed to some of the minutes. It's like, yeah, we're just going to overanalyze the hell out of some of that stuff.
Yeah, kind of coming in before we start talking a game preview. Let's go. Let's stick with big picture here. Rangers, Leafs, kind of in the same boat. You know, we kept the core intact for both of our teams, but I want to
Mhm.
ask you if there's one element here on the Leafs that would prevent you from winning a Stanley Cup, or how about you're most nervous about this year? What would you say it is?
That's a good question. Wow. Well, the first would be the offense disappearing. And that's not a new thing. That's something that happens every year, right? What happens when the game gets tight? Can you find ways to score? Like that's the thing that I think sticks out with Nylander versus the other guys is that the game gets tight, it gets tougher. The defense is much more stingy. You don't get the calls that you do in the regular season. You don't get the space, the time. So can you create? Well, Nylander creates. Matthews, Marner, they have struggled to do that. All of a sudden, the game gets tight. They don't create it themselves. Those chances don't just magically pop up and land on their sticks. And all of a sudden, you look at the end of the series, and it's like, well, those guys had 4 or 5, maybe 6 points if you're lucky in 7 games. And yeah, okay, going almost point per game in the playoffs is great, but like considering who they are, it's not good enough. And when the biggest moments, when things are the toughest, they've kind of disappeared a little bit. So that's always a concern. And it's like the most uneasy feeling ever because there's no, like, there's nothing that will give me any inkling that that won't happen in the playoffs through 82 games. I will not know until April. And that sucks. Like, that sucks. Uh, Defensively, really no concerns. The other thing that I would just say is like concerning, or not concerning, but like what will happen here is goaltending. The past few years, I don't think we've even really gotten like average goaltending in the playoffs consistently. We've had games where it's like, wow, that guy stole, like that guy was incredible tonight. And then you have games like the goal against Samsonov. They showed it in the Amazon doc. It goes low blocker posting in from like the boards. should never happen. It's a momentum killer. It just ruins the mindset and the mentality and how guys feel on the bench, and it just kills everything that's going on, kills the building, right? That happens a lot here in Toronto with these goalies. So will they stay healthy? Will they play above average in the playoffs? Like, that's kind of the biggest things that you need. So it's the goalies and the big boys. Can they score in the playoffs? Those are my biggest concerns. And unfortunately, neither of them will find out till April. So
I think New York can definitely sympathize with Marnie and MA34, man. They are Panarin coded. Like Panarin
yeah,
does the same thing. That it's funny because they're East West, and it's like he put himself 100 points last season. I know Matthews obviously is always in the Rocket Richard conversation, and then you look and suddenly it's a 3 game slide. It's game 6, and you're like, what happened the last 3? Like I didn't even notice that the
yeah,
fall off happened.
yeah. Like, where'd you go?
Right, where did it go? I
Yeah.
actually want to ask. Camera was all on Nylander, Willie Styles.
Mhm.
How'd you receive the doc? Like, what do you have any takes on the series or?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I really love Nylander as a player. I think that one that made me like him more. One of my favorite things ever. I don't know if you guys, you probably wouldn't. You're not going to be following these guys on Twitter and stuff. But his Nylander's Twitter bio says, "Give me the puck." That's kind of one of the things I love about the guys is like, give me the puck, I'm gonna figure it out. In the playoffs, he misses a couple of games with the migraine, comes back. In the dock, there's a scene, he cuts through the middle, I think it's Tavares, doesn't pass it to him, and he screams at Tavares, not to pissy to the void, like he turns and yells at him like, like, give me the effing puck. Like, what the hell are you doing? Give me the puck. And that was one of
Yeah,
the things I was like, man, that's awesome. Like, this guy's in the moment. He scores the last 3 goals of the series for us. You see Pasternak, the camera goes to him because he was also being covered in that episode. And it was like, watch out, Nylander's on the ice. Like, watch for Nylander. You know the other team's watching it for him. The only thing that sucked, and Jay Rosehill brought it up on the show, and I did agree with him. I've never really experienced migraine, so I can't put myself in those shoes. Everyone I talk to says it's the most like debilitating thing ever. Like you can't even like turn lights on, look at phones, like nothing. You can't read, nothing. Um, it was a bad look, I think, that the cameras were on and he's like on his couch with his buddies cheering, watching the game. I understand how that's perceived poorly, so that was the only thing that kind of sucked from the doc. But that was the crappy takeaway, I guess.
I'm a film nerd, so I actually think the big thing that bothered me was actually in that episode because I wanted to see what Willie Sty and Pasta talked about at dinner, and
Yeah,
I felt like the documentary was so great, but it was so fast. Like it was
yeah.
almost too fast paced. Like I love hockey's fast paced game. We know
Mhm.
that. But it felt like at times like I couldn't actually process what was going on. It was going so quick. So yeah, I thought we got to know Nylander like when he's skating with the kids at the park. Like that was awesome. But like you said, then there were moments like that it was like, well, he's got migraines, but we don't really. I didn't feel like we got to receive the extent of it. And then it was like he's watching the game at home. It was like, what is going on?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I knew there'd probably be some perspective on that. And I guess to turn it more to a game preview, the big conversation on your latest stream was about with Carter Hutton was Anthony Stolars and
Mhm.
goaltending. You just mentioned Samsonov. So Stolars, you said Vesna, crazy, little
Yeah.
bit of a reach there. I love it though. Got to give you that. Does he have a chance of starting tomorrow night? And I mean, is this a goaltender that you think they might ride a little bit to start the year?
I think so. The goalie stuff is really confusing here. Like ahead of game one, Berube didn't give any hints at all about who was going to start against the Habs. We had no idea he was injured until the morning of, and it was like even then we didn't know. I think it was Friedman tweeted that Hildeby was going to be flying with the team. For those who don't know, like Hildeby is the kid from the Marlies. He ended up playing against the Devils in that back to back the next night. But like we had no idea. These guys are so cryptic when it comes to any of this stuff. They don't want anyone to know anything. Berube's given like the most cut and dry answers. Wool's been skating. I did see them say that he was dealing with groin tightness and stuff, but I don't see how you don't go to Stolars here and give him another opportunity. The guy has been incredible through the first 3 games that he's played. That loss to Montreal, not his fault. The goal that scored, they lose 1-0. The goal that scored is a cross crease backdoor power play one timer to Cole Caulfield. Like, what do you want the guy to do? Carter Hutton brought up, like, there's a couple moments that he might want back or to play differently from the Kings game, but like, he still let in 2 goals. He made 32 saves. He's looked really, really good. Don't understand how you can't reward the guy. I think he should start Saturday, especially here against the Rangers. Like, it's going to be a tough game. It's a little bit of it's early to call it this, but like a litmus test. Like, who are you? How do you play? How are you going to play against a really good team? Because, I mean, Montreal, New Jersey was a tough test, but Pittsburgh, LA, not the toughest of competition thus far through the first 4 games. This is going to be the biggest game we've played so far. Why not let the goalie, who's looked really good to this point and has earned every second of being in the net, take this, especially on a Saturday night, which are the biggest nights for Leafs fans. Like, Saturday night hockey is the pinnacle of playing in Toronto.
Now, I got to ask you, let's flip over to the offensive side. I think one thing that has stood out to me for the Leafs has been their 5-on-5 play to start the season. I think they've been crushing opponents when it comes to 5-on-5. We know the Rangers, complete opposite of that. That's our weakness. Our kryptonite is the 5-on-5. What do you think has contributed to the Leafs being so successful with 5-on-5? And if you could let us know so we could copy and paste the winning formula to 5-on-5, let us know.
Well, ours is weird because like one of my buddies who I do another show with, he works for the Rangers as well. Actually, he's like one of the he's one of like the ice guys. He like shovels the ice during during stoppages of play, but he's complaining to me all the time about Zibanejad. I can't score a 5-on-5. Forgot how to score 5-on-5. Like, all this stuff. Like, ours has been that we've gotten our top 6 has been all right. They're not like losing their top 6, their 5-on-5 minutes or anything. If anything, they're slightly above or slightly winning for the most part. The biggest difference that we've had at 5-on-5 here now has been the bottom 6. In the past, our bottom 6 has basically made no contribution. And actually beyond that, like, they've just been, I can't remember who I heard say it, but they called it, and it was the best thing I've ever heard, was like a fast forward button. Like, they go on the ice and it's like the most, just get these guys off the, like, they go on, they go off, nothing happens. Like, that time on ice is irrelevant. It's not that anymore. Watching the third and the fourth line, third line actually had a pretty crappy game against the Kings the other day, but like the fourth line specifically, they get to the offensive zone, they dominate their minutes, and then pin teams in. Like, we're watching teams struggle with our fourth line right now. They're not playing in the defensive zone that much. They create chances. The other team has to ice the puck, and then guess who comes out over the boards after? Like, it's Matthews, Nylander, Marner, Tavares. Those lines are coming out. So it's watching them go has been pretty awesome because they actually are winning minutes, and that has been a huge difference here so far. Like, they're scoring, they make it difficult for the other team. It's fun. It's fun to watch them, honestly.
Well, Zach, I want to appreciate all the insights you provided, and I think before we hop off, we have our first comment celebration here. Mika cannot score 5v5. Now that that's come up, because I know this conversation's come up a lot with the Leaf centers, what's your outside perspective on the Rangers, like, right now? Off the top.
Okay, so one of the first things, one of the funniest things that happened to me the other day was someone commented in one of our shows that their best bet of the night for a goal scorer was Riley Smith. And right as I was pulling it up on screen, the guy who covers the Rangers is like, well, yeah, he's playing on like top line minutes. And I was like, what? Like, that was like a little bit shocking to find out that that was in there. But honestly, the Rangers is one of those teams that I just keep looking at, and the way that they play, the defense specifically is just so tough to find ways to like poke holes in. You're going to get, for the most part, I look on the outside at this Rangers team, very good special teams, incredible goaltending, who I have a question about for you guys before we end this one as well. More so to kind of give you guys a little bit of a jab, but I am actually interested in your thoughts at it. But incredible goaltending that is like, if that guy's on, it's very difficult to score and create any offensive 5-on-5. You need to take advantage of your special teams minutes, and it's hard to beat the Rangers on special teams. So it genuinely, I look at the Rangers, if they can find ways to dominate 5-on-5 minutes, I look at them as a group that is very difficult to beat and a group that should be contending for the Stanley Cup. Like, it's hard to get power plays in the playoffs. If they can take advantage of those 5-on-5 minutes, I mean, I don't see how it's an easy out for anybody when it comes to April and playoff hockey.
All right, so we got the peak and the drop, and we all know what question's coming.
So he turned down the largest contract, goaltending contract in NHL history. What is going on there, boys? Like, is there panic in New York right now? Because I could tell you, if we found out that Mitch Marner turned down a different player, obviously, but turned down the largest forward contract in NHL history, or a winger contract in NHL history, people would be losing their minds here. It's, I mean, he deserves every penny, but paying goalies has traditionally not really worked out that well in the history of the NHL, not in New York. Like, I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about history of NHL. It has not worked out that well. Like, are you guys worried about this at all? You think that over time it'll just kind of play out like, yeah, this is what he deserves? What the hell's going on?
I think there's kind of like this. It's obviously a polarizing question because I think they're the two sides. There's a lot of validity to both, and you don't the X factor is the unknown after this year. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what roster players are returning. Like, they could make a big shakeup. From all the inklings from the offseason, Drury tried to shake things up and couldn't, based on a lot of the contracts he inherited from Jeff Gordon and John Davidson. And he said, you know what, this is going to be your chance then. And that seems like that's what the conversation was
Yeah.
uh, with this core group. And then the question is, so who is that core group for the next year? You know, is it kind of a retool? There's a lot of players in the wings that looked really good from the preseason. I think personally, I would pay him. But like you're saying, historically, Lundqvist took up the same amount of the cap when he
Yeah.
re-signed. And once they signed Girardi and Stahl, two contracts that glare is like not great, or, frankly, towards the end bad, then they were handcuffed for sure. The offense, like, they could not sign an offensive player. So I think it just goes two ways. Like, it's not just Shesterkin. Lafreniere is probably earning 8x8. And then where does that put you? Like, then are you kind of pinching pennies to get the depth? What does that allow you to do with the deadlines? Like, I'm sure these are on the books looking ahead, but it's dramatic here, man. Like, it is as dramatic as it can get. I think with both
Yeah.
baseball teams being as good as they are, it's kind of like cause
Take some heat off.
distraction for right now. But when that news first broke, it's like you have fans that are like, if he doesn't want to be here, then go. And we know that conversation. I think all of us, for whatever sports teams we follow, have seen that before. And then
Yeah.
there's the side that's like, what comes after this? Because the Rangers historically, like, you go back 100 years, they've always had a good goalie. The only time they didn't have a starting goaltender was in the 80s. So I think it's like six in one hand, half dozen in the other. I could see
Mhm.
both sides, but Steve-O, I know you have a stark opinion. So
I'll give you the straight up answer. I'm 0% worried. You could come back and holler at me if things don't work out, but Igor is the one piece the Rangers have to retain. You
Yeah.
mentioned the Rangers are built on goaltending. And I always say this: the Rangers will go as far as their goaltending takes them. I know that's not ideal come playoffs. You guys got Marner, you guys got Matthews. You'll go as far as they take you. For us,
Mhm.
it's different. It's the goaltending, and the last 2 years, I don't know if you watched the Eastern Conference Finals last year with the Rangers. I mean, Florida was so dominant on defense. I mean, we were relying on Igor to carry us. So I think
Yeah,
Igor is the
Steve-O, he had 35 plus saves each game,
Yeah,
like it's just, and Bob's contract too, also same goaltender in that series, like that was one that like Spencer Knight started playing, and then like 8 years into the contract, he won the Stanley Cup, had a Vezina season, and it's like, okay, now it looks great. But
I
like the
know.
10 by 10 at the time looked terrible.
People were talking about buying him out. Yeah,
But with Igor, for me, I think it's more. I'm not worried about the price. Listen, Igor, one of the best in the league. You got to
yeah.
pay him. For me, it's the years, you know. But when it comes down to it, I think Drury's going to get it done, and Igor will be staying in New York. I love when Bleacher Report and everybody else comes out with the top 10 landing spots for Igor. I mean, come on, there's only one spot.
That's
Well,
fair.
listen,
That's fair.
hopefully it's not the Leafs.
No,
You
that
know what?
won't be happening.
Actually, Zach, too. I'll tell you this from my experience and just briefly in the locker room. Like, he's also he seems like maybe a little bit tough to deal with.
Yeah,
I think he's earned the status of not, he doesn't really speak English, so I think that's part of it too. But frankly, I think like I never interviewed him one on one. I actually never saw a reporter interview him one on one. So like it's definitely like they keep him guarded, and I think part of that is him too. And
right.
you've seen too, like he could be a dramatic on the ice with some flops and stuff, and he goes right to the official when there's a scrum. So
Yeah.
uh, I usually criticize that when it's another player. He happens to wear a blue shirt, but yeah, there's a lot of drama surrounding that, Zach, and I'm sure next time, hopefully next time we have you on, it's resolved. I don't think it will be, but yeah, thank you for coming on and just chatting some Rangers Leafs before tomorrow's game. Really excited for that. It's always special to see the best goal scorer in the NHL go up against the best goaltender. Speaking of Igor, speaking of Matthews,
Hmm.
and some of those other supporting cast members. And it was great to try the live stream for the first time. I hope hopefully this starts to take off as we do more of these.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on. Happy to talk Leafs anytime. Uh, Matthews, I think, got the best of Shesterkin last year. The couple times they went head to head. So interested to see how things play out tomorrow night. Do you guys have a score prediction for the game tomorrow?
I was just about to ask you the same thing. We're not really big on predictions here. On
I don't like them either, but I just want to know. We got Leafs Rangers preview, so
How about this? I'll give you high scoring. I think it's going to be a high scoring one. I think the last few games, especially with the Rangers,
mhm.
Panarin, Trocheck, line number two has been lighting it up. You know, so both teams coming in offensively, we're both on a roll. So I'll give you high scoring.
All right, read
Hmm.
my mind on that. I'm going like 5-4 overtime. I genuinely think we've seen all the big dogs score against the Rangers. Like I wouldn't like if it was like William Nylander based on this conversation, I'd be like, all right, Bobby McCann, OT goal. Hell
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. He's on fire. But I think if it's the Rangers, like I think I gotta take Breadman in OT. Like I think I have to, just based on how he's leading the league in points. Like I'm gonna take that. And I think it's gonna be high scoring too. Rangers D hasn't been great, and the Leafs clearly are getting out of the zone quicker. So hopefully that's the way it is. But Zach, what's your prediction?
I was gonna go the other way. Low scoring, tight,
Oh,
like a 2-1, 3-2, potentially like an overtime. Like I think this is gonna be an exciting one, not like a slog fest. Like yeah, we just got out of there, and either way, Leafs or Rangers won by one goal in OT or anything like that. Like I think this is like an exciting one. But reason I put it that is I feel like especially if Stolarz plays, I feel like we could see just a really good head-to-head goalie kind of duel. Like it'll be exciting. The big boys on,
Holy duel.
yeah. I'm not saying this because Stolarz is on the same level as Shesterkin. Not at all. Not at all. I'm not putting him in that category. But just he's hot right now. Leafs defense looks good. This is bright lights opportunity. I feel like the big boys on both teams could potentially kind of have themselves a really good game, but just not be able to find the back of the net at like an alarming rate because of the goalies showing up. But I do feel like this is a game where the big boys are the ones who score. Like involvement from Matthews getting on the board here. I could see like a Panarin, a Lafreniere. I feel like he's been really fun to watch lately, actually as well. So those guys getting involved, but tight, like 2-1, 3-2 is kind of the way. And obviously Leafs winning this one. So
Listen, we'll chalk it up as 2-1. How about that? No,
okay.
seriously. Actually, right before we hop off, I do want to ask where the heck did Bobby McCann come from? I just mentioned his name like 10 times, but
Yeah.
what the heck? Where did that come from?
So Bobby McMahon was actually really good here with the Marlies as
On a
well.
McCann,
Yeah,
McMahon.
McMahon.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. He was really good with the Marlies here, but like he's the kind of guy that we've really been looking for with the depth. Like Dubas used to bring in, um, these speedy, skilled guys. I mean, I don't want to knock it because I do believe in the analytics and like implementing that kind of stuff in it. And it's one of the biggest issues that I have with some of the people who are in Toronto media here is like, well, you can't beat the other team if you don't score. And when you get to the playoffs, like this team lacks scoring. Well, those guys have all been on the team every single year. And that's the thing that these people in media here are kind of just blacking out in their minds because they don't want it to be true. Is like, well, those guys maybe don't fit the playoff style the best. McMahon plays that kind of style. Like he's the guy who just randomly is an OT hero in playoffs, or a guy who just scores a big goal out of nowhere. Like it's that kind of prototype. Him, Nyes, like the big body who doesn't blow you away with regular season points and goals, but just comes in out of nowhere and wins battles, is able to play in the cycle game, get to the front of the net, is greasy, gritty, and tips home pucks or smacks in rebounds because he's playing on a line with guys who are able to create those opportunities. Like McMahon playing with Nylander right now, Nyes playing with the Matthews and Marner. Like they're just going to benefit from that, but they're the type of player that hasn't been here before and hasn't really like been focused on in these lineups, like Lorentz joining the fourth line. That's a major difference than having your fourth line be like Nick Robertson and Holmberg and Kampf. Those guys aren't the gritty type of players that really excel in the playoffs. McMahon, he fits that prototype for me, and I feel like that's why he's excelling here. Is also because Tree Living came in last year and was like, hey, we're not going to play this soft speed skill style of hockey. It's going to be the most important part because that's who our skilled guys are, but the rest of the lineup is going to be filtered in with these other pieces. Tree Living put an emphasis on it last year. It was up to Keith to try to adapt it. Didn't go 100%. Guy like Berube, like that's his bread and butter. That's what it's going to be, and those guys are going to really take off here, I think. So I think that's why McMahon's worked so well here through the first 3 games that he played, because he was also scratched game 1 as well.
Well, I guess we'll have to see Bobby McMahon in action, the off-season additions in action, and hopefully see we'll see if Anthony Stolar starts. But thanks for coming on, Zach. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Of
Thanks,
course.
Zach.